check with YouTube. Stream is healthy. Okay.
Hang on a second. That felt better.
Cool. So we are with Savage Tim, who will compliment us on last week's interview with Jerry Meyer about preparation and conversion of Savage Worlds to Savage Worlds material,
Yep.
and as well as a lot of other news. Tim, how did Savage Sunday turn out for you?
This past month was really good. We had our Colonial Savage Sunday. It was just towards the end of May, so that was our theme this month. We had three big tables that all ran. My table was a little bit smaller, but I actually wanted a smaller table this month around, just because of the way the scenario was happening.
Hmm.
I was doing Solomon Kane. Our buddy Jerry was running Accursed, and I know you were running your Colonial Age Cthulhu game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, how'd that go?
That was a lot of fun. It learned I was the Solomon Kane soldiers. I should have looked a little closer at the stat block because for the soldiers they have chainmail like armor, so their toughness of 8 was way more than Mook's level,
Yeah.
and that before I caught that in the middle of the first combat, so that slowed things down to a little crawl, especially with where it takes 2 rounds of reloading your musket.
Yes. Yeah, it would.
But beyond that, they had a lot of fun. They chased Cthulhian through the tunnels beneath Innsmouth and blew up boats, and you can't really ask for much more.
No, you can. That sounds like a grand time.
Yeah, it just needed makes a couple of trims, I think, to it. Figure out one way to stop them from in one action from stopping the BBG from showing up, and I think I'll have that ready to run at Queen City.
Awesome. Good news.
Speaking of
Yeah,
Queen City,
right? Yeah, have we talked since the Kickstarter ended? I think we have.
uh,
I
yeah,
don't remember if we did or not.
we've not this show,
Not on this show, yeah.
not on the show.
Well, the good news is that the Queen City Conquest Kickstarter did wind up completing very successfully and wound up making more than enough money to have the show, and a little bit more. And one of the big things that's a positive for that too is that they made enough money in the Kickstarter that they're able to provide us with a dedicated Savage Worlds room. There's going to be one for us, and there's going to be one for Pathfinder. So we're going to have a little bit of space for ourselves to work out for the entire weekend. Now we only have one other problem: is filling the tables. So I got to check with the con staff and find out exactly how many tables we're going to have. I think the rooms have about 4 tables in them.
Mm-hmm.
So my goal is to make sure that we have at least 2 games running in each slot. So if anybody is out there who's listening in and is interested in running some Savage Worlds game for Queen City Conquest, stop by at queencityconquest.com, sign up to run a couple events, and we'll see what we can do about getting some swag. We're going to be getting in touch with some of our friends over at Pinnacle to see what kind of giveaways we can get to give away to some of our hardworking GMs and our hardworking players. And always, the Queen City Conquest is again doing their promotion thing where for every so many players that you get into your events, you're going to earn convention credits, and you can use those credits either to reimburse your entry fee or to buy stuff in the dealer's room, which is usually a really good deal. Even though I always wound up giving mine over to my daughter because she takes them from me. So what are
Oh
you gonna
dear.
do? She's lucky, she's cute. But anyway, so yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. We got to get our button gear now because we've only got a couple months to go, and I got to get my stuff laid out and ready to rock. So I got to get to work on that stuff.
Yeah, I'm still trying to get my stuff for Gen Con finished. So before I focus on Queen City, that's why I'm trying to
Hey,
get things for Savage Sunday as being the stuff that I run it down there.
good deal, good deal. Are you running Savage Worlds at Gen Con or?
I am not, unfortunately. I am slated in for doing a full thing of D&D for Baldwin Games, and the
Okay,
games I decided to do on my own is Paranoia with the new edition.
nice.
Doing the event Donuts and Paranoia. Donuts is treasonous, Paranoia is not, because it's like the Thursday 8 a.m. slot. And also, I'm doing what I promised for the Mystery Science Theater 3000. I'm
That's
doing Manos, The Hands of Fate, Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, and it looks like that'll
nice.
probably be for 6th level characters.
Nice.
And I got a lot of the dungeon design for that, so that's about halfway designed.
Good. Good deal. Yeah, we're going as tourists this year because I'm going to have the wife and the kid with me. So I'm kind of taking it easy at the convention, but that means I have more time to actually sit down and play some games with any luck. So I'm looking forward to it. I know I was looking at the schedule a little bit earlier today, and I noticed that well, there's an awful lot of Savage Worlds games on the schedule, and they're awfully full. So I, again, that's another thing that if you're interested in running games for stuff, I know that they've done some little bonuses for game masters who run stuff at Gen Con. So it's definitely worth checking out, signing up, run a couple games for people, and see what you can do to help out the cause. Because it's always a lot of fun to run Savage Worlds conventions. It's always one of their top draws that they have at the show. So it's always something you want to do if you can help out.
Cool. And I hear that our Western New York Savages got some nice mentions from Pinnacle.
Yep, we got a little bit of love from Pinnacle, and they do their Tuesday update every week. And they did note some of the work we've been doing a couple of weeks ago, largely because they noticed that we've been doing stuff both here and in Rochester. Our buddy Mike Sprague ran an event at Just Games in Rochester. They did their own version of a Savage Sunday. We had 3 tables running. My good buddy Tom Wisniewski was running a Star Wars game. Mike was running one of his Pulp games, and our other buddy Dave Schneider was running a conversion of forget the name, Gamma World. I kept wanting to say Hell on Earth. I'm like, it wasn't Hell on Earth. It's the other post-apocalypse game. It was Gamma World he did. I've played in that game. It was a lot of fun to play in it. Dave's a very good game master. He's a really nice guy too. So I was really glad to see him come out and run some games and stuff. And got to see a couple of familiar faces, a couple of Gnomes Stew regulars were out there, and got to see Lana Smith and got to see Angela Murray and a few other folks that we know. And Mike Sprague and his kids.
Did Vicky drop by? She said
she said. No, they actually found out about it too late and were not able to stop out in May. But she promised that she was going to be there in the future. That was Vicky Beaver from Overtron Productions. So we're looking forward to seeing them in future months. I unfortunately will not be there this month because it happens to coincide with my wife's birthday. But the next Savage Sunday that's coming up is going to be again at Just Games in Rochester, or just outside of Rochester, and it's going to be on June 12th. So it's going to be this coming Sunday.
Ooh. And the Buffalo Savage Sunday, what is the theme going to be, and when is that going to be?
The theme this month is hot fun in the summertime, because it's going to be at the end of June. So it's going to be right about when things are starting to get warm and hot. And so that's going to be coming up on Sunday, June 26th at Dragon's Net Games, just outside of Buffalo, up in Amherst. So we're looking for GMs for that too currently. I need to start getting my butt in gear and see what I'm going to run this time around. But I think
I'm going to do some Hell on Earth finally. I've never done Hell on Earth. Hell on Earth.
Hell on Earth is good times. Hell on Earth is good times. So I have an old fantasy scenario that I originally wrote for D&D that I converted over to Savage Worlds, and it was a lot of fun. And it was actually the first game I got to play with Evil Mike and Chaos Steve. And I won't spoil the surprise, but let's just say that that's when I found out why Evil Mike is called Evil Mike. So, but I'll tell you about that later, Garrett, off air. I'll tell you the story. But I don't want to ruin for anybody who might be playing.
Cool. So we're talking conversions, and let's jump right into there. Everybody says Savage Worlds is a great thing to convert to. It's a great system to run. It can handle anything. Is it true? Can it handle anything? And what do you need to have a lookout for if you're thinking about converting and like a classic D&D or a Pathfinder or a Gamma World to or a Star Wars even to Savage Worlds?
Well, as big of a Savage Worlds fan as I am, I wouldn't say that Savage Worlds can handle anything. There's certain stuff that it's really great for, and there's some stuff that's not so good for. It really isn't good for high-level kind of court intrigue, like with Vampire the Masquerade or something like that. The system really isn't designed for it. It's designed for cinematic action. So cinematic action, what you're looking for, then this is the place you want to be. With a fair degree of crunch. It's not a completely narrative game like Feng Shui would be. It's pretty crunchy too, so I wouldn't use it for anything. But there's definitely stuff I think works really good for Savage Worlds, and some stuff that maybe not so much. Like I said, I've converted a couple of D&D things over to Savage Worlds, and the key is as we always advise people, is you want to convert the feel and the style, not necessarily every single modifier. Every single modifier really doesn't necessarily work. Here's an example. Let's say if you think of a classic D&D style dungeon crawl, where the player characters, they come in one end of the dungeon, have a bunch of encounters. Those encounters earn them experience points and treasure and magic items that let them become more and more powerful the further they travel into the game, into the dungeon setting, until they finally reach the end. And there's a big monster there that they can fight, defeat, and win. Okay, and that's your basic general model. And that works great for D&D because D&D is based on a system where there's small incremental changes that slowly build the power for your characters. So every time you encounter, say, a kobold or a rust monster or an orc, you're earning a small bit of experience and a small bit of ability, recharging some of your resources so that you are better suited to fight the big monster at the end. Well, Savage Worlds doesn't really work that way. It doesn't matter how many kobolds you fight. You're not going to get any more experience for it. You only get experience for participation and for being an awesome player. So if you took a classic dungeon crawl and put it into Savage Worlds, it would feel kind of unsatisfying because you're not really earning that much. And treasure, while it's still nifty and awesome and really simple to handle in Savage World, if too much of it can be really powerful and can kind of throw the balance off a bit. So you don't want to give as much magic items as you would for a D&D style game. So for those reasons, I wouldn't do a dungeon crawl using Savage Worlds. I've done a couple of fantasy games with Savage Worlds, and I think it works great for that. But they weren't classic dungeon crawls. They were just fantasy world, fantasy settings that had a bit more storyline and plot involved, rather than the classic dungeon crawl environment. So the other big thing too is I've had a lot of success with converting some other systems that are also a little bit more narrative that I wanted more cinematic action in, converting those to Savage Worlds. So, example like Call of Cthulhu. You know, as you're well aware, Call of Cthulhu can be a very dangerous and deadly setting for player characters to live in. Turns out the Savage Worlds can be just as dangerous and just as deadly, but it still can be a lot of fun too. And since it is more investigative and more geared towards research and finding out the details and figuring out mysteries, it works really well in the Savage Worlds rule set.
It feels like a lot of the mechanics and concepts of Cthulhu was built right into Deadlands, even.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't think that's a mistake in the slightest. I think that was definitely a big influence on that style of Deadlands and their style of history. But I converted the classic Master Nyarlathotep campaign from BRP and the Chaosium system over to Savage Worlds using the Realms Cthulhu rule set from Reality Blurs. Mm-hmm. And it was fantastic. It was exactly what I wanted to see. It was a big world-spanning, lots of pulp action, hordes of cultists getting mowed down by Tommy guns, and it was exactly the game I wanted it to be. And so it was a really great time. I was very happy with that conversion. I think it went really, really well.
Okay, and what were the elements that you keep in mind for conversion? I mean, as far as setting rules, as far as building the BBEGs and things, what are the resources that you use? Do you use the Fantasy Companion, or do you scan the internet for what other people have done of similar things?
Yeah, those are two really good resources. Is take a look at what the Fantasy Companions have to offer, or the companion books as well, and use those as a guideline for how to design new items or new events. So the way you would handle, like, say, magic items in Savage Worlds is that magic item is really nothing more than a portable edge. And instead of having to invest your character points in getting an edge, you have it in the device that you're carrying. Those who are old school Champions fans will recognize that quite simply, as that's a focus ability, which is a power modifier. But in any case, so once you kind of understand that, once you kind of grasp that concept, it becomes really easy to build your own new magic items. You can do it on the fly almost. So it's easy to kind of translate some of the stuff you would see on a module.
Tim, you're breaking up a little bit with the audio. Yeah.
How's that? That sound okay?
No, you're going cyborg.
I don't know. Do we have a sound problem? I haven't done anything.
Yeah, it sounds Can you drop out and then drop back in real quick?
Sure.
That usually fixes this problem.
Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3.
That fixed it.
Okay. Cool. I forgot where I was. Dang it.
We were talking about magical items basically being portable edges.
Yes. Yeah. So once you kind of understand that concept and sort of see how they handle it, it's pretty easy to pick up and run with that concept. There is a very large group of people who are Savage fans who are out there who are already doing conversions for a number of different settings. And all you got to do is Google Savage Worlds and the name of the setting you want, and you'll find it.
Mm-hmm.
Case in point, there's about 15 different versions of Star Wars for Savage Worlds out there. Take your pick.
Two different versions of Firefly.
There's at least two different versions, probably more. I've seen ones for Traveler. I've seen ones for Gamworld. I've seen Star Frontiers. I've seen, and of course, classically now that which is actually now a published product or will be a published product soon is Rifts.
Mm-hmm.
Rifts, which is a total conversion of an existing game world, an existing game system. It's not a licensed. It's not a licensed world like we've seen with Lankmar or some of the other stuff they've done, but it's a complete conversion. It's an official conversion of Rifts to Savage Worlds. This is a fantastic concept. I think this is so awesome. Can you tell I'm excited because my hands are moving very fast?
Yeah. It's like you're ready to just go check the mailbox to see if the books are there yet.
I am. And while we're talking about books that are in the mailbox, for those of you who backed the Rippers Kickstarter, that's already shipping. So look at this. I already have my Rippers books in. Woohoo! Spicy Rippers, scary monster, Victorian monster hunters. Yay! I like Rippers. What do you want from me? Rippers was one of my favorite settings. So, yeah. But anyway, so back to the topic of conversions real quick is, like I said, the key thing to remember is don't try to convert mechanics, convert the feel and the style. Don't try to convert every little thing under the sun because it really won't map. And the other thing, too, is keep an eye out for places where you can apply trappings to make the existing Savage Worlds items feel more like your setting. So it's pretty easy to use different trappings for powers to get a lot of different effects. So if you pay attention to that, you can't really go too wrong.
How about with the Savage settings in there? How do you use those to tweak things to try to emulate the feel of other settings?
Yeah, I'll sometimes keep an eye on different items and move them from one place to another. Like I said, the companion books are really useful for that sort of thing. Even though there's no real, you don't really have a Savage Worlds monster manual, but it's pretty easy to go to a setting and say, hey, let's see how they handle big scary monster, or let's see how they handle orcs. And every setting is going to do a little bit differently. There's a bunch of different versions of zombies around. As an example, a lot of them are slightly smarter than other ones, or they're not quite as slow as other ones, and just one little tweak of an ability here or there will change the feel of the monster completely. So something you can look out for is grab another book and take a look and see how they handled it. Use that as the basis.
Well, what was the key for you, since you played several of the Star Wars games? What was the key for converting that to Savage Worlds? What was it seemed to be the biggest challenges for there, and what was the best accomplishments you've seen in conversions?
I think that a lot of people get hung up with the Star Wars conversions and worrying about force powers, and force abilities, or how the force should be represented. And I think that Savage Worlds already has a built-in mechanic that really emulates the concept of an all-powerful force that binds the universe and can sometimes help you out in the form of bennies. Is that the bennies is really your force ability. Every player character has a little bit of this ability with them, and they can use it to affect events. Bad guys have the dark side of the force on their side, which are the GM bennies. And sometimes things work out for them a little bit better. So don't get too hung up on converting and putting a whole bunch of mechanics in play that may not really be meaningful. The same thing with Jedi powers is that a Jedi really isn't all that too powerful in Savage Worlds. All you got to do is give them a couple of abilities like, I don't know, arcane background superpowers. Just right out of the core, you give him a couple of skills that back up his actual abilities. He makes a roll for those, and wham, bam, there you go. Maybe have his setting rule saying that he can activate one of his force powers as a free action per turn. Way to go. And if you take a look at the Fantasy Companion, there's a professional legend there called Adept, which is sort of the same kind of thing.
Yes.
Pretty easy to steal.
Why reinvent the wheel?
Exactly.
And what is your favorite game that you have emulated? You were telling me about your converting of Cthulhu.
Mm-hmm.
What was your greatest moment with conversion?
Yeah, I think Master LFTEP was really was the best conversion I've ever done. It was very involved. It was very in depth. I had to convert a lot of NPCs on the fly. I had to convert a lot of the monsters over by hand because there weren't already versions of them in the existing Realms rules. So I had to do a lot of work to make stuff that worked, and it was very successful in that regard. And like I said, it was one of those. I kind of wanted the campaign to sort of feel like a group of pulp adventurers in the vein of Doc Savage, and having that feel of a group of people who could face overwhelming odds and come out on top. And with the Savage Worlds rules, it was really easy to do that. Big spoiler alert, but at the end of the campaign, there's a sequence where the bad guys are trying to launch a rocket to open up a portal in space to rain down destruction upon humanity, as you do in Cthulhu, sort of thing. And so you have this huge underground cavern in a dead volcano that has a number of cultists swarming around it, trying to prepare for this launch, while the heroes are trying to fight their way through to defeat the big bad guy in charge of the project. I'm like, isn't this a James Bond movie? I've seen this movie. Like, you got these guys in their yellow jumpsuits running around with the little white helmets. It's like you only live twice. I'm like, that's exactly what it should feel like. It should feel like you only live twice. And using the existing pulp rules for Fanatics, along with some of the sanity rules for Cthulhu itself, and some of the monsters that were converted, gave me that Cthulhu meets James Bond sort of dynamic that I really wanted. It worked great. It was so much fun. The players were still talking about it today.
What would you do for if you were doing a straight James Bond Savage Worlds area? What things would you put into that?
Luckily, I don't have to, because again, our friends from Reality Blurs, have done Agents of Oblivion, which has a perfect setup for a super spy role-playing game. We're all members of a secret organization called Oblivion that goes and hunts weird strangeness, and you can dial up and dial down the amount of weird strangeness you want in the world. From one aspect of being, very Jason Bourne kind of, just regular super spies, all the way up to having superpowers almost with psychic abilities and magic and all sorts of other bizarreness. So it's right there. It's right in the books. So with that case, it's another issue of making sure that everybody has a chance to do something, that everybody has their own role in the group. And some of the rules in there that are really useful, like the gearing up rules, where you come up with a plan to execute, and then you have to spend resource points to determine how many items you're able to gather in order to complete those tasks. It's a really well done little system. So I would just pull that off the shelf and just use that. There's no conversion necessary.
I bought the PDF. I read it. I just never ran the thing.
It's good times. I've used it as a basis for some of the modern Cthulhu stuff I've done, as far as like weapons and abilities and that sort of thing.
Excellent. And any other news to talk about for Savage Worlds, Tim?
We talked about Gen Con. We talked about QCC. We talked about the book shipping. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Oh, yeah, that's right. So, like we said, we're coming up on our next Savage Sunday, which is going to be end of June. Planning again on doing it in July, and it's going to be kind of a special one, because in July will be our 1-year anniversary.
Yay!
So yes, we've been doing these Savage Sundays for a year now at Dragon Snack Games, and I've been very pleased and very humbled to know that so many people have gotten a lot of enjoyment out of attending, have shown up and played with us, have run games with us, and done some really, really terrific stuff. I've been very honored. And I'm still trying to think of what I want to do. I want to do something a little bit special to say thanks to everybody for sticking it out with me for this whole time, and to maybe thank our sponsors, or the fellow who helps us have a place to do it. It's at Dean Smith at Dragon Snack. And to let him know that that we appreciate all the stuff he's done. So maybe next time we talk, we'll have a little more solidified for that.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you for joining us, Tim.
Awesome, always a great time, Garrett.